This episode of the Unredacted Podcast is brought to you by Dragon Forge Consulting. Dragon Forge provides boutique consulting services for federal and commercial clients looking to expand their business in a turbulent time. Learn more by visiting their website at www.dragon-forge.net. That's www.dragon-forge.net. That's nice that you say that, because it seems like every time we connect, it's like, oh, it's good to see you. Is she serious? She said it so many times now.
Well, I'm never going to, it is a leading question, because I'm never going to be like, Brian, I hate seeing you. But there's pretty much one reason I agreed to do this podcast. I'm doing enough podcasts. There's the only reason is because it's you.
Oh.
It's you.
Oh.
Because I love you, Brian. You make me happy every time I see you. So you're just one of those people in this community. Right, we've had that. Like, this is how this got started. I would see you at these conferences and events. You'd be like, why are you wearing such weird clothing? I knew it was you from across the expo hall because no one else wears sequins to a defense industry event.
That was a special one. Yeah, that was a special one.
I wear that all the time now. It's been a progression. It's kind of like I'm a published author, obviously. So yes. I've reached my, again, I say bona fides. Why is that a word? It should be bona fides. It'll take me to my grave. I don't want to have to say it that way. I have professional credentials now. I had
a friend of mine who would go to events, professional events, and he would wear like I'd be in a suit with a tie, pressed shirt, right? Like maybe I showered that day. We'll see. And it's a mystery. How close will you come to me, right? So, but he'd come to these things wearing jeans, like a casual suit jacket, no press shirts, and he looked fine, but like it wasn't what everyone else was wearing. And then when it would be like a really super casual type event, like a happy hour, he'd be wearing a 3-piece suit, maybe even a tuxedo with a bow. And I'm like, are you missing these signals?
Maybe. Was he in IT? It's possible.
Yeah, maybe. Mm-hmm. But he said fashion is a statement. You've already cracked this code, so I'm giving away one of your secrets.
Yeah.
Fashion is a statement. So he would reverse it so that in the crowd he would stand out.
Yeah.
I was like, that's clever.
Yeah.
I don't do this. I wear what I want to wear.
I think everyone should feel like they wear what they want to wear, right? And that's like my big thing. Even as a woman in this industry, if you want to wear a pantsuit, if capsule wardrobe is your vibe, rock it, man. Me, I put on my leopard print coat purchased at Hot Topic in high school, and I've been rocking it all week at the industry events I've been attending. And I had this moment where I was like, really? Really? Are you wearing a leopard print coat from the Hot Topic? And I'm like, yep, I am. Why not?
So today's episode occurred to me as we were planning another episode. And I was like, hey, we should interview more authors.
Oh, people forget. I know.
And you just published this book, Trust Me. And I was like, we would be remiss if we didn't get on the microphone and talk about this topic, because you and I connect on this a lot. And because it's like it's a ubiquitous thing in our industry. Like you can't not talk about somebody's clearance level or where they worked without, knowing something about how it all works. But you may bristle at this description, but I'm going to say it. I think you're probably the preeminent expert in this field.
Nobody else wanted to be. Lots of people are like, how did you get a book published? I was like, pick a topic nobody else wanted, and then that's your niche, right?
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. That is a key to publishing, too, because if you want to get something published, so much it is about, like, what is what are your professional credentials, right? What do you know? What do you bring to the table? And it's a lot easier to be the person on a topic than to be, fighting for market share with thousands of other people. I'm clearly not going to be a beauty influencer, Brian.
Fashion.
Too much competition. No, even the fashion people. Sorry, I have to take a water break. It's like, why is she rifling through her Mary Poppins bag? I got thirsty.
Sad truth of it is, folks, is that I offered Lindy
a break.
Hey, do you want to take a break before we get into your book? And she's like, no. And here we are.
This ties into the book. Do you know how I recorded the audiobook?
Tell me.
I went to my cousin's husband, Frank, my cousin's house. Her husband, Frank, is an audio editor. He has a studio in his basement. Oh. I recorded it start to finish in about 6 hours, and I just locked myself in that room with a box of chicken biscuits and a bottle of water, and I was like, I will not leave until it's done. Because I only have so much time. Time is my most valuable commodity. That's the thing about writing the book.
Right.
So everyone's like, how did you have time to write a book? And I was like, well, I have, evenings, sit down. It's easier when you have that institutional knowledge, right? I've written 15,000 articles. I mean, that was a part of the pushback. And like, why should I write a book? I've written so much about it, but I continue to get so many questions about it. I was like, you know what? I bet there's a lot of people, bibliophiles like myself. I'm also a bibliophile. Reading is my favorite hobby. Who like a book, the internet is one thing, but it's nice to be able to sit down or listen to an audiobook and kind of get a narrative from start to finish. And that's where the internet can't do that. You could piece together all of my articles and come to a lot of narratives, but to kind of create the arc of what is the security clearance process like? What is the history? What got us to here? Mm-hmm. Why is Donald Trump revoking security clearances by executive order? Mm-hmm. Where does that authority come from? So it has the both sides of it. I'm a history buff, so I wanted to do the history, but I'm also a current events political buff, so I wanted to say, like, hey, and this is how this ties into, like, our current moment.
I love the book. It's spectacular. So
he never read it. No.
She gave me a signed copy, y'all, so we're all clear on this. So I had to read it. But one of the things that you said that I think I agree with, like, having a physical copy, like a physical thing to read, to me feels so liberating. We're in front of screens all the time. And being able to just sit and have a book to read under a good lamp, hopefully, great. I think it's spectacular. My daughter just got introduced to LP records on wax, with the needles and the whole thing.
Yeah.
And she's like, it's a really different experience to listen to a Billie Eilish LP. We call them LPs. From start to finish. And the way she records them, the song, and I don't listen to her music, but the songs feed each other like they used to with albums before, not like as they are as kind of studio cuts. Because now the industry is more like, well, here's a song, here's a track. Mm-hmm. Actually, it's the experience of being in the album with the artist, listening to the message, that I think we've sort of lost. So you're recapturing a piece of that by actually writing a physical book, which is pretty cool. And you're ruining our outline, by the way, because I was supposed to have a question. Why'd you write the book? Well, you already answered that question. So now what?
Yeah,
I'm all discombobulated.
I'm a bibliophile. It was just like I wanted. Yeah, I went back and forth. I will say, like, everything that's changing right now made me really question. And we talk about imposter syndrome, or whether you believe that's like a term, but I appreciate your calling me the preeminent expert on the security clearance process. I don't typically feel that way, I mean, ChatGPT would say that I am, so that thank you for that, AI. But it's tough because you're putting yourself out there and saying that this is true. And I try to come into everything in my life from a place of open-handed humility. I hope that's a refreshing concept. And so I know that there's something wrong in that book that I wrote. Guaranteed.
Factually.
Has to be something that because dates change, even like the dumb one I always do, the personnel subject interview.
Okay.
Sometimes I forget and call it personal. And I was like racked with, and that's something no editor is going to know the difference, right? Because we have all these government terms. So I can't even send it to the publisher because they're not going to know if I jacked it up, but I'm going to if I read it.
Right.
So there was a lot of pressure to say, like, what if I do this? And then I'm actually discounting my professional credentials because somebody's going to read the book and be like, well, didn't she know? And then again, an article you can always change, right? People correct me all the time. A book is, you're putting it out there and like, this is what you're putting out there. So there was just a lot of like pressure and back and forth. And what if I put this out there? And as the book talks about, security clearances are all born out of executive order, which means like the president has a lot of power over this process. I could write about something that is a staple to the process, and the president could put out an executive order the day after I publish that makes it all like, this is inaccurate, right? To your point, things change too, so you're going to have things that are inaccurate. But I had enough friends encourage me. They're like, hey, even if the process totally shifts, even if in 6 months something is, like, at least you've got a milepost here. And I tried to make it broad enough and, again, historical enough that there's going to be something of value even if we see shifts in the process. And as we see those shifts, hopefully there's enough anchor points to say, hey, this is why it's been this way. And, you know, you can count, government doesn't move that fast. So we're still, all the adjudicative guidelines still there. They are in the process of updating them, which I've noted in the book. So, like, they're in the process of theoretically rewriting them over at Odie and I right now. But I mean, in the past 25 years, they haven't changed any, so I'm not going to expect any, like, dramatic shifts. And
we're going to have to unpack some stuff here because there's a lot. Let's start very simply. What is a security clearance? How would you define it? How do you describe it?
Well, a security clearance, Brian, is just a hot term for eligibility to access classified information. That's actually the government term. So I always say, like, what is a security clearance doesn't exist as a credential in the government space. What the government is granting you is eligibility and eligibility determinations based on vetting. Vetting is like the new nomenclature, right? It's like the space, like UAPs. Hillary Clinton had to describe that. So I'm like, let me describe the nomenclature of security clearances. Vetting is what we're talking about now, and vetting scenarios. Because every person who works in a government space, whether you're a direct government employee or a contractor, has to go through some form of vetting. Maybe it's a top secret clearance with a polygraph if you're in the intelligence community. Maybe you're just a truck driver who needs a CAC or a credential, HSPD 12, these terms that, you know, relate to credentialing. Don't ask me what it means. I don't even know. So all of these credentials that are related to vetting and trying to make some uniform vetting process. But it's known across the community, as you know, if you want to work in national security, you're going to have to get some form of security clearance. And I wrote this book coming out of the place of, like, when I got my first security clearance for the Department of the Army, I didn't do any of the things that I tell people to do as they're getting a clearance, because I didn't know what it was. I didn't come from, again, I'm from Iowa. I was not born in the deep state as you people in the DMV are.
That stings.
I know. I didn't grow, I didn't have the family background. I mean, it is like big. If you're coming from the outside, you just don't understand so much of this process. I actually thought it was just part of, like, oh, this is what you have to do to work for the Army. Like, the notion that I was getting a security clearance didn't really occur to me that was a thing. And now I'm like, well, it's pretty important. I kind of wish I'd paid more attention to the forms back then, 20 years ago, when I filled them out. That was an easier, simpler time. I hadn't done a whole lot.
You used a term I don't know, vetting scenarios. What is a vetting scenario?
That's what they say. They call it the vetting scenarios now, is like how you go through the process. So it's the notion of, like, are you getting a background investigation? Or are you going in for a suitability determination or a public trust? They now call them vetting scenarios versus before it was very much like different. You're getting a suitability determination or a credential. They call it credentialing, suitability, security clearance. Now they've tried to, like, put an umbrella over those to say they're all different vetting scenarios. I know this really doesn't matter, does it? Do people care?
I think
you can read about it in the book.
Yeah, well, there's more details in the book. So, yeah, one of the things I think your book does really effectively is kind of take us like where we've been in this process and why we have it and so forth. Can you give us a little bit about that? Like, who came up with the idea of like, you know what, maybe we should figure out who these people are before we give them access to sensitive information?
Yeah, well, there's like basically two origin stories for the current, like, I would say, vetting process, right? One is the Civil Service Act. So that was the idea that we need to have some process. Wasn't there a civil? I wrote about it in the book and I already forgot about it. I should have reread my book before this podcast, Brian. So like, it's, you know, some civil servant was upset that he didn't get the government job that he wanted, so he shot the president, as people will do. People think politics are dicey now. Like, remember people used to do duels? What a simpler time we had. So then they were like, oh, maybe we should have, you know, some criteria. So people don't just think it's, you know, the system of spoils that they're going to get a job because they knew the president or whatever. So that was like the Civil Service Act, kind of a lot of the things that they required there. So, oh, we're going to like, you need to like tell us where you live and list your neighbors, and we're going to check in your background to make sure you are who you say you are, was born out of that. And then the notion of codifying and protecting information was really born out of the atomic bomb and the need to protect the nuclear program coming out of that. So all of that was like the atomic bomb saying, World War II, hey, we are in deep conflict. We need to protect the secrets that we have. We have this big secret, and then codifying the process out from there. So that's what they say. The current clearance process we have is very much still this 1940s, 50s framework. And a lot of that framing hasn't changed. Like, people are still like, I have to list my neighbor and their middle name. Like, I don't talk to people. So I think some of the modern pushback is, why aren't we using, you know, more intuitive technology? Why are we requiring some of this why are we requiring the information that we are? Those are legitimate questions, because it is still very much framed out of this, you know, 1940s, 50s framework. The Trusted Workforce 2.0 reform effort started in 2021. That's been the first modern overhaul of the clearance process. And it's like, to our conversation earlier, that's where we get this idea of vetting scenarios, saying, hey, we want to understand better across the holistic. It's not just a national security clearance workforce. What does our trusted workforce look like? How do we establish and frame trust across our government work ecosystem, which includes contractors and support personnel?
And prior to the Trusted Workforce 2.0, was a very fragmented process, right? Different agencies did it different ways. Has that changed, or it's still kind of true?
Agency, you know, specialness is still a big thing. And I talk about this in the book. Like, I talk for the most part about the Department of Defense clearance process. You can call it Department of War if you want, but it was DOD back in my day. So the DOD clearance process is what we talk about. The IC is very special, always very special. The IC is special, and a lot of that comes down to suitability. So I say, like, they have the suitability and polygraph requirements. So I actually write about this in the book. I tell people, like, shoot your shot at the level you think you can get to. So I get a lot of, like, because again, so much of my work in this space is working with candidates who are new to the clearance process and want to know about it. And some of those folks, if you have a lot of anxiety, mental health issues, you can likely swim through the DoD clearance process. You embark into the IC, that's where they get the special questions. You might have to have a psychological evaluation, and that's not just because you have mental health, you know, background. That's because everybody gets to have a psychological evaluation and a polygraph. I'm like, if you don't think you can pass a polygraph, maybe don't take a polygraph. And this is like, and that's where I try to, like, because there is valuable work you can do for DoD with a secret clearance too. I mean, this is maybe a hot take, because again, so much of the work that I'm paid to do for clearance jobs is about the value of that TS, SCI, full scope poly population. We need more people to do that. So if that's you and you want that, go for it. But that doesn't mean there's not a lot of value for you working. You can do, I had a secret clearance working at the Pentagon, doing communications. Amazing job. Loved my job. I did not need a TS-SCI with a full scope poly to deal with public information coming out of the Department of the Army. Like, so I think sometimes we create this hierarchy, right, of like, social classes in the IC ecosystem. So a lot about the book is really explaining that and saying like, hey, there's value in all of this. This is what you can expect from this clearance level. These are the clearance levels that exist. This is how you asked me one question and look at the many places I've gone. But all that to say that, yes, the IC is special, and we are trying to call it transfer of trust now. Because reciprocity is the term that's been used. And the issue is all of the agencies say, well, I've got great reciprocity numbers. I can onboard somebody in 6 days. What they're hiding is the 6 months they spent in other lands. And then, the security Bubba got it and was able to flip the switch in 6 days. But you had inefficiencies across your process where it held, or you required a new polygraph, or you did things to get that position there. So we're trying from a policy reform perspective to say, hey, transfer of trust is still an issue. Like if you want to go from the CIA to the NSA, that should be seamless.
Should be.
It is not. Often they're going to require a different polygraph, and this is a pain point for service members too. That I like to say, you can be this is where the LCAT labor categories, labor category reform is as important as clearance reform, and that's what we're moving to, like starting to see now, because you have so many service members working. I like how they call it, I always just say NSA. But other people like the Maryland customer.
Yes,
so
yes.
Why do we do that? So anyway, it's actually the NSA. I know, I was like, if you're listening, Russia, the Maryland customer who happens to be the NSA. I'm going to spoil it for everyone.
Oh, sorry.
The NSA, service members, so many service members support that, and we get that pushback. In my day job all the time, where people say, "Hey, I was a colonel in the Army working over here. I just applied for a job with." Name your favorite government contractor who supports the Maryland customer. And they said I couldn't because I only have a CI poly and the contract requires a full scope poly. Yeah. And I'm like, this is why we can't have nice things. They're like, well, you have to hope that you can get somebody to sponsor you. But that's where the inefficiency still exists. Like if you were able to work the job in uniform with a CI poly, we need to adjust that contract so that you can have a contractor working that same job with a CI poly and not require a poly why do we have that different requirement?
It's an interesting question. So I've been polygraphed more times than I want to admit. But when I was working at the CIA, as a contractor, I had a lifestyle poly, which was really invasive, right? It's questions about your sexual orientation, it's questions about your personal behaviors that include like drug questions and things like that. So not a fun experience, especially when they get to the point where it's like you're lying about this. And it's like, okay, yeah, well, I'm not, but that's fine, And it's really designed to put pressure on folks that are trying to deceive, and that makes sense, right? Because you're going to get some pretty high levels of trust. But I think the funny thing is that when I became a federal employee at DIA, which now requires a counterintelligence polygraph, which is not as invasive in terms of questioning. Still a stressful process, but not as invasive. So I was downgrading my clearance, and they still put me through everything again.
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, why are we doing that? I'm coming from a higher level of trust, I think, more vetting, and now I have to redo it all? For I won't say lesser clearance, it's all the same clearance, but for a lighter standard, it didn't make sense.
Yeah.
So you happen to be on the Intelligence National Security Alliance
Security Policy Reform Council.
There it is, Security Policy Reform Council. Thank you very much. And you're focusing on these topic areas in terms of how industry and government think about security clearances, right? Mm-hmm. What's some of the things that people say on the government side, or the folks that are kind of holding the line around this is the policy, this is what we've done for years. How do they defend, I guess that's my question, how do they defend some of these practices today? Oh, she's laughing too hard.
Have you heard government defend itself very often? I just want to reply. I just want a response to that question. I mean, they don't know why they're doing it. They've just been doing it for so long.
Interesting.
That they just are going to do it. I mean, we had this. I mean, we've had this already. Just doing the with indocs across the IC. New folks coming in with a new administration, and suddenly, areas where there wasn't friction in the indoc process, suddenly there was again. I mean, I just feel like the pendulum is constantly back and forth, even if you do get, because so much, this is, I'm trying to think of the most appropriate term to, I don't want to say this is this is something we could doge people. Doge this. This is government inefficiency. This is actually just people who there are ways that we could make this process better and more streamlined, and because of, I don't want to say ineptitude, because I honestly don't think that. It is so hard in a security culture to push back if you're saying, well, I'm requiring this extra step, right? What if Brian Drake did something crazy in the 6 months that he transferred jobs? We're just going to require a new polygraph and an all-new vetting process. And it's hard to push back against that, even though if you really look at the risk posture, the risks of somebody transferring in from another agency, there should be that level of risk acceptance in the process to say, I mean, because that's even all the policy folks that are brilliant brains around this will say, we're not going to, you don't eliminate risk. There's no such thing as risk elimination.
Mitigation.
There is, mitigation. That's all we're doing in all of this, and is requiring a new polygraph every time somebody transfers jobs in the IC really the best way to mitigate it? I don't think so, but they've been doing it so long. So much of it is just the culture of the security organization has not really been modernized, and that's what will be interesting to see, because now there's a big push about AI in the vetting process and all of that, enabling better technology in security. So will we get to the point where we say we need to take a little bit more of to get the kind of efficiency and progress and workforce mobility we need to be able to take a more aggressive risk posture and say, we're not really giving up that much. Again, for somebody who's already been polygraphed for one IC agency to move into a different one.
Right. So how do you respond to critics let's say that's the kind of the philosophy of going forward. How do you respond to critics that say things like, well, Edward Snowden, as an example, coming out of the CIA, fully polygraphed, transferred over to NSA, and they had identified anomalies in what he was doing at CIA, but NSA just accepted it. Now, he was a contractor, both ends of those things, so there's a what we call the clearance crossover process, which says, I trust this contract, you trust this contract, and therefore I'm trusting this person. Okay. So that was done at the request of government because it was too hard. The request of government and industry, I should say, because it was too hard to do it the way they were doing it, which required a new company vetting, new person vetting, way too onerous. So now here's a case example of a person that betrayed our country and did not get that extra layer of vetting. How do you respond to someone who says, look, we have to do that because you have these types of things happen?
I haven't heard people use Edward Snowden to push back, because I think there's been so many of these cases where we've seen it is actually it's a workplace security culture failure more than a security process failure, because so many of those folks come in could have passed a new polygraph. Pretty sure nothing would have come out that would have shifted what he had done. The reality was he had a number of security violations. I mean, using other people's passwords. We had the same thing with the Discord leaker. He had multiple times where he had been reported for writing things on Post-it notes. These are workplace security culture issues. We're not seeing something and saying something, or in some of those cases, we're seeing something, we're saying something, and then nobody's taking action on them. So my pushback every time on those is show me an instance where you really where this was really a vetting, back to our, word of the day, where this was actually a vetting issue. 9 times out of 10, it's actually a reporting follow-up culture issue. Like, what is our punitive process for addressing security issues that we see? And that ties back to the issue we have now, where we don't have enough people doing this work and doing these jobs. Because in all of those cases, probably they were like, well, if you're a contractor, you don't want to lose a contractor on the spot, because that's billable hours that you don't have the personal, motivation to look into somebody. The government should, and that's really, the government has to take a lead on this. Security is born out of the government. It has to start with the government. The government has to be the leader in this, but the government also just wants to get the work done still. So even, again, for the National Guard, they're like, well, somebody's working here. We don't want to take the steps to, make somebody else come to work because we put this guy on administrative leave while he investigated why he keeps writing down classified information on a Post-it note. But that's the workplace culture issue, and we need to significantly shift that. And that's where it becomes a mindset issue. My big push with this, why do I want to write a book on the security clearance process? Because it is incredibly important, and it is treated like an overhead function. HR and security, both in the government and in organizations, do you consider those mission critical work?
Most people don't.
Most people don't.
Yeah, but it is.
Your security officer should not be somebody who was additionally assigned that job because you found them and they looked bored. And that happens across the military culture often. Who's your security, Bubba? Bob.
Steve.
Yeah, this guy.
We have this guy. He's terrible.
He's terrible.
Terrible.
We decided he should do security because he couldn't hold a gun. It seemed like we should put him in a safe space. So I was we have those examples. It is not treated as the infinitely important. It is critical to our mission to have a good security, and then that's where HR and hiring is tied to that too, because so many of these things, they need to not be overhead. How do we make them mission critical focuses in organization and not just, not priority functions?
Some folks know this, but I'll just say it here. I was on the Snowden task force at DIA with a bunch of other folks, and we called it something long and boring, some sort of damage mitigation, something or other. But it was basically the Snowden task force. And I hope one day the American public gets to see all the things that we got to see. One thing that was really, and I have to commend the courage of the House Intelligence Committee at this time, and it was run under a Republican tenure. So I don't remember who the chairperson was, but they had the courage to start writing down the story of what was done. One of the things that came out, to your point, is that Snowden had gotten vetted through the regular process. Great. Then he was in the job, and anomalies started popping out in his behavior on the job. And the CIA got to a point where they're like, you don't get to work here anymore. Right? Because he's a contractor, right? Now, if he was a federal employee, it would have been docking pay. It would have been something like punitive that's like, you're going to get the hint here, you're not supposed to be here anymore. Then they can pull their clearance, right? Yeah. But they didn't want to take that step because that's paperwork.
Yeah.
What's easier to do is just tell the contracting officer, this guy's gone.
Yeah.
And that's what they did. So then here, floating out in the universe, he's like, hey, I'm fully cleared, lifestyle poly, None of the security violations or any of the anomalous behavior are attached to his application to his next gig. And then he just flows right in.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and that's why, Odie and I, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, has discussed this. The information sharing with industry piece is something they've been trying to solve for a while. So how do you have that? I think the government has traditionally not shared information with industry, right? Mm-hmm. They don't pass that along or down. That is a known issue. And that's what's painful about some of this stuff, something they've been working on for a while. There should be a way that you can just, again, create a flag. We have these, collective IT systems that should be the security clearance system of record for these folks. If they have violations, because that's a big thing too with continuous vetting, flags are going to pop up, and a big part of my education piece is it's not terrible every time a flag pops up. Just because you have an issue that has to be investigated does not mean you lose your clearance, and in most cases. And again, unless the president is pulling your clearance by executive order, you have due process. So even if there is a violation that's significant enough to question your clearance eligibility, you have a process where you can defend yourself. You can get an attorney. And so we need to be less, I don't know, I guess scared to use that process and to say, hey, if we have issues, identify them. But yeah, to your point, like, people take the easy button. It is a lot easier just to fire somebody without taking that step than it is to actually do the security work involved to notate it, to pass that information down to industry so they can act on it as well.
Yeah, and we're starting to kind of unravel a piece of it that requires some vigilance, right? So it can be abused. You can say, well, I'm going to pull your clearance because it's part of your job responsibilities to maintain it. And guess what? I'm pulling it because of whatever reason. And now you can't be in this job because it requires a clearance. Sorry. Bye.
Yeah.
Right? That's kind of an evil way of going about a personnel action.
Yeah.
And punitive, right? Because now I can't have a job with a clearance into the future. That's not what happened in Edward Snowden's case. But maybe it should have. Yeah. Interesting.
Hindsight's always 20/20. It's a lot easier to look back at these things.
So we were talking a little bit about people that are learning about this process and so forth. And if you had any advice to give somebody who was thinking about getting a security clearance, and you gave us a little bit of this, but like, what's some advice that you would tell folks?
I mean, we've just done a great job of making the process seem so awesome, Brian. I don't know why anybody wouldn't want to get one.
Why wouldn't you?
No, I mean, my biggest takeaway is, like, take a chance on this work, right? I do feel like that's a part of a lot of people opt out of the process. I mean, to my whole notion of that, unless you understand or know about these careers, you sometimes don't take a chance. If you don't know somebody who's had a clearance, sometimes you don't realize what it is or, what to do. So for me, there's a large swath of national security work out there that needs to get done, and we need people willing to get the clearance because there is a trade-off. Linda Weisgold, God love her,
great,
wrote a nice little review of my book for Cypher Brief. I cried. I was so excited because you write these books and you're like, will anybody like it? And I was like, I must be okay. Because
yeah.
I was like, whoo, litmus. She was like, I read your book. I was like, I didn't know if I should be excited or scared. So, if she is former head of analysis at the CIA.
Yes.
Sort of a big deal.
Sort of a big deal.
So I was like, if she
Wonderful person, by the way.
Delightful. So I was like, if she can read it and think it's useful, then I'm there. But she talked about those trade-offs, right? If you're getting a security clearance, you can't eat the drug gummies that your cousin brings to Christmas anymore. You can't,
right.
just it affects your risk posture, right? You have to be less risky in terms of what you do because there are implications, finances. You have to be a steady Eddie. Like, the government is vetting your trustworthiness across your personal, to your point about getting all the personal questions you get with the polygraph process across your personal and professional life. It intertwines those things in a unique way. So I want people to understand that, but also to not be afraid of that. And I hope that's what the book does, is educates people on. I mean, because I write about all of the very interesting questions I get in my inbox about this clearance process and how it seems invasive. Parts of it are invasive. There is a trade-off, but ultimately I think it's worth it. It is the best work you will ever do, the most mission-focused, vital work you will ever do. And there is something about doing that work for the government and having a deeper understanding of how our national security works. I think even for whether it's a short stint like my illustrious 3 years with the U.S. Army or a long career, it is work that's worth doing. And to the extent that a clearance is a requirement for that, I hope the book builds understanding of that process.
This is spectacular because I think, so I have a very different view now of holding a security clearance than I did when I was in my 20s. In my 20s, I had that aspiration, I want to get a clearance so that I can be more effective, I can have more authority, I can help in a bigger way. And it is a little bit of what did you call it, a second-tier citizenship kind of problem. It's like, yeah, at certain levels, like, you can't be in the room. Sorry. Right? You just can't until you get those levels of vetting. And so I want to be in the room. I want to be able to contribute, right? So, yeah, I hope it's not scary to folks, because it isn't. Like, once you start going through the process, I have to tell you, it's terribly bureaucratic.
Yes.
Bureaucratic and long. And I'll tell you this, my wife was a background investigator for OPM, the Office of Personnel Management. And she will tell you, like, it's just a thing. I'm sitting in front of you. You got questions to ask. I'm going to write down the answers. It gets passed to another person to look at them. Then that gets passed to somebody else. Like, it's just a very serial process. They do interviews. They pass it along. Mm-hmm. And somebody somewhere decides, yes, approved. And it takes a long time, rightfully or wrongly. It just takes a long time. So that's really awesome to hear you say, because I think that is the message we want folks to take away. So my last question for you is, writing a book, they say, I've never written one, but now you have, is a process of discovery. You discover things about either yourself, the topic, your work habits, things like that. What did you discover in writing the book?
That I'm relentless. No, I mean, like, people kind of have that. I think because of my life and what I have, everything is squeezed into the tiny corners of space that I have for it. So this very much was like, seasons of my life between 9 p.m. and 11 p.m., putting this manuscript together. I used to be an early morning person. Then I have too many children now, so the morning hours are dead to me. This is like I think the first 2 kids I still survived being a morning person. Now I have enough kids and kids that are old enough that they require me to basically be awake 24/7, and so I'm up later hours, and then after enough cups of coffee in the morning, I become a functioning human. So it was just evenings putting it together. And it was a reminder that I do love this work in this community. I don't know that I needed that reminder. Like, I'm living balls to the walls across all spectrums of my life, but definitely in my work community too. But just, again, I mentioned the Linda Weisgold. I had Bailey read the book for me. Shout out to Bailey. She is somebody that I'd come across working in the community. And she'd ask me a few questions like, you know what, you're actually my target demographic. Like, would you read the book? She read the book. Girl is flipping brilliant. Like, the best edits. Like, again, a paid editor got nothing on Bailey, who I don't even think I remembered to send her a Starbucks card, but maybe I'll send one now when the check's clear. But just delightful. And so I think writing a book, if you do it right, I hope it requires enough. You can't do it all on your own. You're going to have to rely on like somebody to introduce you to the publisher, somebody to tell you how to write the pitch or the manuscript, somebody to help you, your cousin Frank to let you record the audiobook in his basement. Like, you're going to have people together. And so I think it was a reminder to me, I can live in my own head and get worried about, if I actually have value or if anyone truly loves me. And so
I love you.
And writing the book, it was right like, oh, this is good. Linda liked it. Bailey found it useful and read it, whole thing for free, and had great edits. Like, all of these people who collectively help you, I think that's just a good, any successful person you see, it took 30 people to help them be that successful. So that is definitely my story of the book, and my work community too. I don't probably give clearance jobs enough love, but the fact that they allow me to, like, I take up a lot of oxygen. They're always like, she's the mascot. We didn't ask her to be that. She started dressing in weird outfits and became that. So shout out to my work, to my clearance jobs family, who also like allowed me to like build that space and use it.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, and you said this at the outset, like, you have now made a permanent impression with like something that is going to become required reading for anybody thinking about a national security career. And the interesting thing, like you're saying, it's changing a little bit, and there's going to be new policies and executive orders, and it's going to change. It always does. And so those are new opportunities to learn and educate, and you'll have a new version of the book.
Yeah. Update. Taylor's version coming soon.
I mean, there's plenty of folks that have written these kinds of staple books that are like the touchstone for people to understand intelligence analysis or to understand what is terrorism and how's that done, right? You can think of like the Bruce Hoffmans of the world that have written those kinds of books, and you're in that orbit now. It's so cool. It's so cool to know you.
Oh man, Brian, way to make me feel awkward.
Oh,
and
it's just
nice to know you.
Well, Lindy, thank you for sharing all that. And if anyone's got questions, we've got a questions handle. You can email it to us, and Lindy might answer those questions.
We should do an Ask Brian and Lindy episode.
Ooh.
Hopefully, we eventually get enough questions coming in. I would love to take audience questions, Dear Abby style.
We'll do a mailbag.
Yeah. We got to do a mailbag episode. We'll get enough of these done. We'll get feedback. Send us your questions.
We're waiting. Send them. All right, Lindy. Hey, good to see you again, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks, Brian. And this has been the Unredacted Podcast.